So my name is Marjolein van Eck. I work for IBM. I'm also responsible for the Open Badges program inside IBM. So I'm sure the name of David Leeser sounds very familiar to a lot of you. David and I are tied to the hip, where his focus is primarily on the external ecosystem. My focus is really on issuing badges and the whole badge program overall for our 400,000 IBM employees. So for today, I want to talk you through, why is IBM embracing open badges and why are we planning to use badges as the digital skills currency for our workforce. Now, some of these things have been mentioned already in previous presentations, but I think my point here is that this is true for the academic world, but it's just as true for the corporate world as well. So obviously our demographics is changing too. We have millennials already in leadership positions. We get new generations, and these new generations, they demand a different type of experience. We call it the, the consumer experience here, but we were talking yesterday a bit, apologies, about the different type of needs that this new workforce has. In terms of technology, but especially around career and skill development. Things have to go fast, rapid, and if you think about this in light of IBM or any technology company, the world is changing so rapidly. So also for us, the skills that a workforce also need to change quite rapidly. So we not only have the challenge of the changing talent landscape, but at the same time we have the challenge of our internal landscape. So our company constantly needs to transition. I was just approached over coffee that somebody said, I didn't even know IBM still existed. Well, we are still very much in business. I won't say who it was. But that's really, our challenge. We used to be a computer company, right? We sold laptops, servers, hardware. None of that exists in IBM anymore. We basically sell people to clients. We have all sorts of innovative solutions and products. But the people haven't changed, right? Obviously people have left IBM, but a lot of the people needed to be reskilled. So a big challenge for IBM, big transformation. We're still in the midst of that transformation. So in light of that, probably some of these statements don't surprise you, but also for IBM or any company, we see that career and skill development is always the #1 priority that employees call out. Reason to join a company and also the reason to leave a company. So this is really our key challenge in light of everything else I just described. This is another dimension that is, we feel the pressure on our shoulders that we need to really get this right. We lose talent if you don't do this right, and you're not able to attract new talent. And given the transformation that IBM is in, this is so critical, important to us that we get the right talent with the right skills, and also that we continuously upskill the employees in the company. So what we said is, even before we dove into badges, we said we really need to approach things differently. So from a career and skills perspective, and keeping in mind that new workforce, this thing of linear paths, traditional career pathing, just as we heard around traditional learning in universities, same for the companies. Traditional learning, traditional career paths, they no longer exist. So yes, you can still become an architect or a technical specialist, but at the same time what we're seeing is that a lot of our careers are more experience-based. So that same architect may have followed a very different path than 10 years ago. So that requires a different thinking in how you shape those paths. And what we saw is that badges were the perfect solution for us to do just that. At the same time, transparency. What does that mean? Transparency in terms of job opportunities, transparency in terms of what experiences do you actually need to grow into that role or to get promoted in a company. We noticed that with badges we were able to do that. We were able to provide more clarity and interim steps. So not just the big milestones, but really what are the minor steps to get there. And there's not just one experience or one path, but there are different paths where we're using badges as the building blocks, basically. And obviously the whole ecosystem around it. So getting more engagement, getting more support from managers, from peers, from mentors is unbelievably important. So sending out a message with badges is one thing. But if you don't get that other layer right, you're still missing the boat. So for us, badges are more than just a description of skills or experiences. For us, they're also a way to signal what skills are needed in a marketplace. And actually, I spent the last 3 months down under, not in Australia, but down under in the weeds, launching an enterprise-wide careers campaign where we, for the very first time, broadcasted what are the strategic hot roles and hot skills in the company that are needed to transform our company into the future. And we use badges to declare that. So we were not only able to provide direction, but we also gave them badges that allowed them to directly develop those skills. And I'll show some results later on because we really, skyrocketed our percentages in terms of adoption rates. So for us, again, it's more than development. It's also about people getting more visibility. So in this challenge of this rapid moving workplace, having insight in the 400,000 employees in IBM and what skills they have is obviously, as you can imagine, very important. So for me in the role of HR, but for any business leader or any project manager that's looking to staff a client engagement, knowing where your talent is and being able to rapidly understand the skills and experience that they have to staff projects is obviously one of the critical success factors here. So there's more to this than just skill development in our perspective. So, as promised, some of the demographics and the metrics. So 53% of IBM employees currently have at least one badge. We have a total of 400,000 badges issued to IBM employees. So that means that, for quick math, there are people that have more than one badge. In total, we have issued 600,000 badges, so that also includes the external ecosystem. So the numbers here are just for the IBM employees, but IBM as a company has issued 600,000 badges since end of September. Claim rate is extremely high, so everybody that earns a badge actually goes into the system and claims it directly. You see 94% is a pretty high number. The number that's not on here is sharing badges. I just heard very low percentages. For IBM, it's very high, which is probably not a big surprise. We're in early days. People earn badges. They want to share it. They want to get recognized for it. So people share it on LinkedIn, Twitter. We're also looking for internal platforms for people to share their badges. So these numbers, these are really impressive. But we get the same questions. So what? Everybody has a badge. Great. What do you do with it? So what we do with it is pretty significant too. So here are some of the other numbers. I just talked about shifting expertise. If we look at the numbers, we have almost 3/4 of our badges are tied to strategic skills. Strategic skills for us are skills that we need to move into the new world, to be ready for things that clients want from us in the future. So that's one piece. The other quarter pretty much is comprised of the milestone badges. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. So we are really focused as a company on issuing badges for strategic areas. Now, do we have the basket weaving badges in there? Yes, probably. But from a corporate perspective, we really want to focus on the qualitative strategic badges because those are the ones that we actually want our employees to earn. Sharing badges, I just talked about the high percentage, but technical eminence is really important for IBM, as you can imagine. We want to win in the marketplace. So we use badges to brand ourselves and to be vocal about our technical eminence. Engagement, obviously I can't release the numbers, but our engagement is actually going up. And that is so critically important for any company. But moving the needle on engagement, for those of you who have experience with that, is really challenging. So using badges and that enabling environment to increase engagement is a huge win for IBM as a corporation. Skills registry, more insight in skills data, 139 countries, but combine that with 400,000 badges, you can imagine that we have a lot of new insights in the expertise of our population. So getting into the how we do this and what it looks like. Every company uses different structures. This is the structure that works for us. We actually already changed it in the meanwhile. So we're doing this in an agile way. We're learning from feedback. We're learning from badge issuers. So we changed the categories along the way. This is probably not going to be the final state either. We'll continue to iterate, we'll continue to change the criteria, but this is in a nutshell our framework. So we have knowledge badges, skills badges, proficiency badges, and then when you get to the higher levels here, we have certified badges. And this is always a critical thing. Do you keep certifications separate, or do you blend them together? And we decided to blend them together. So this is just some of the examples in each of those categories, but the design thinking badges, the agile badges, those are the ones that we call strategic skill badges. Now obviously there's a lot more industry, but I chose these because these have the highest uptake in the IBM company. It's probably not a surprise. I think the design thinking badges have around 60,000 badges issued in IBM, so that's a pretty big number. And then when you get to the bottom section here, you see that we have profession certification, so I'll talk a bit more about that, and new collar careers. There's been some press releases about this too, but IBM is looking to issue badges and work with colleges to build badge programs for employees that are not yet employees, but for students that, for different reasons, dropped out of school and need a new chance in the marketplace. So IBM is working with these colleges to set up badge programs so they can be better prepared for a job in the corporate world. So profession certification is something that we're really focused on. So we're not quite there yet. We're still in the build mode. Some of these professions have been released, but these are the very traditional careers in IBM for which we used to have the formal certification programs. So rigorous packages that have to be submitted, hours and hours of paperwork. We did that. In this new world, we don't want to just replace that and say, if you've done this, you get a badge in return. We actually want to think differently about how that would work. So how does it work if you are a project manager? You do your work on the job. It would make total sense to get a badge in return when you're done with that project, rather than at the end of the project still having to do a write-up and then get the badge. So this concept of badge as you go was something that we wanted to implement for certification. And again, we don't want to have just one path, but it should be different paths towards a certain milestone badge. So we don't want to dilute the whole concept of certification because that's still a very rigorous step where people do a peer review or a board review. That step is still in there. But we don't want people to spend hours and hours on writing certification packages where actually they've already demonstrated the work. So they're getting badges after these projects, project badges, and then once they're ready to earn the certification, they simply show those badges, and then they have an additional interview or test in order to get the profession certification badges. So this is a radical different approach to certifications in IBM, and that forms the big layer for the career pathing in our company. So obviously as a technology company, we can't do without technology. We love that. So we have built quite a rich technology platform around digital badges. So one of the things we said is we need to get the badges out there in a way that makes sense for our employees. So not just dumping them to the Acclaim platform and have them browse through thousands and thousands of badge programs. That doesn't make any sense. We need to put them into context. So you can imagine in a company as big as IBM, we have more than 10 different business units. We have all sorts of different career paths and strategic directions, and then there's different directions in the countries. So we are publishing badges as well as that career guidance in a career guide. And then in addition, we have a learning platform where we started to import badges to. So employees can use that platform to search for badges. And they also get recommended badges, for example, based on their personal profile. So if you're an architect, you get badges that apply to the architect career path. If you're a consultant, you get different recommendations. The other big piece here is around where can I see my badges? So Acclaim is obviously the platform that we're using. But it's not always ideal for employees that want to be eminent inside the company, because then you have to go to Acclaim, and at the same time your manager couldn't really see what you had done. So one of the things that we did as well is we built an app for employees so they can share the badges that they have earned. but also allowing their managers to see the badges that they have earned. So that's another feature that we incorporated. You can imagine that if managers see the badges that you have earned, they can start using that for career planning purposes, for promotion decisions, compensation decisions, because that insight is now there. So we share them at the same platforms as everybody else, but we also have internal platforms where we want people to share their badges. So we can find these people for everything I just described, but also for people to be eminent and start telling the story about their skills, because for big portions of the IBM population, it doesn't come natural to them. So we've always said, update your resume, update your digital footprint, but a lot of employees never did that. So with badges, it allows them with one click to do that in a very simple way, and they're actually doing it. So that's fantastic. We also build a lot of reporting. So for a company as IBM, insight and skills is fundamental. Without that information, we would be bankrupt tomorrow. So with badges, we build technology to use badges combined with other expertise data. So we're using cognitive analytics to mine digital footprints of our employees. So badges is one data source, but we're using additional information to build insight in the strategic skills of a population, or whatever slice or dice you want to get. You can imagine that this is a very rich data set now that IBM has got their hands on for workforce planning, to understand supply, demand, being able to guide in certain direction, make investment decisions on learning, for example. So wealth of information, and we were ready with the right reporting functionality. I talked a little bit about learning as well. Your Learning is actually a platform that we sell externally as well. We haven't sold it yet with badges, but it would be interesting if anybody's interested to do a demo. It's pretty sophisticated. As I said, it uses cognitive intelligence, so it gives you recommended badges. We're not quite there yet. I mean, the ideal world would be that it gives you recommendations for pathways, for example, so we're looking into that too. But now we have learning and badges, so basically all learning and development in one place, which is very valuable to employees, that they can just search on a search term and they get recommended badges and learning for their specific role or the role they aspire. Professional Marketplace is our system to staff projects. So this is something else that we did, and this is obviously what I'm really focused on, is getting badges in our ecosystem so people can start using it and it becomes the normal way of doing business and really truly making it a skills currency. So if, for example, a project manager is looking to staff a project, normally they would go through resumes, etc. Now they can go through badges. They can see not only what the person has done when they graduated, what type of work experience they have, but they can also with one click see the badges that these people have earned. So again, additional information to more quickly staff projects with the right people. And then last but not least, IBM Expertise. This is taking all the expertise information of our employees. And this is more for the employees than it is for the project managers. But if I'm working on a project and I'm looking for an expert, let's say I need a cloud developer, then I can go here, and badges is one of the key data sources that allows me to find that expert so I can solve my challenge at my project. So this is another angle. So not just giving the tools to the project managers and the leaders and the HR folks, but also putting it in the hands of the employees. So 400,000 employees can now see where the experts are and really enable that collaborative effort that we need in a technology company, that if you lack the skills, quickly find somebody in your region or elsewhere that has the expertise that you may be missing to help you solve a problem. So this is pretty significant too for us. So what's next for IBM? If you saw these results, obviously we're challenged with the same things with badges. We're big in IBM, but what's happening outside of IBM is going to be really important for us too. We're seeing the first employees coming into the company that have earned badges, AT&T, Ernst & Young, Microsoft. How do we value those badges compared to the IBM badges, and how does that really work? How do we bring those together? So semantics, taxonomies are really important for us, but also the pathways, so personalized recommendations for employees, really almost guiding them in the right direction that we want them to move into. And that can sometimes mean outside the company, right? But we want employees to be more employable, because they may leave and then they come back again to IBM. Because that talent market is changing so rapidly, you need to think about, what am I investing in these employees while they're here? When they're leaving, they may come back and they've earned new badges. So we're investing heavily in cognitive technology that allows us to do that. With the volumes that we have, it cannot be managed manually anymore, so we really need the technology. And we're doing that with Watson. Watson has built a cognitive career coach. So that's what we're using. And it's really, almost like you're talking to a person. We're currently in beta testing, but imagine that you would basically ask that person, I'm struggling with my role, I'm considering another job opportunity. Micah, in this case, is the name. Would give you recommendations in terms of, have you explored this, have you found a mentor, look at these badges. So by question and answers, we can guide employees and give them more personalized career guidance. So this is one of the big next things for IBM as a company. And then last but not least, job opportunities. So think about what I said at the beginning about transparency of jobs. Really important as well is that we enable that movement, that we increase our internal mobility of IBM employees. So tying badges to job postings, not only externally but also internally, that allows us to do better matching of people. We started to do that as well, that you currently can see jobs that match your profile. We haven't inserted badges yet, but that's our next thing, that we're using badges on the supply and the demand side to say, hey, these jobs, these 10 jobs, like what LinkedIn is doing, for example, with recommended jobs, you may be interested, or colleagues in similar roles or roles that you aspire have followed this path. These are the recommended roles or badges to follow. So these are some of the things that we're doing to really add more value to badges. And create it as the digital skills currency that we intended it to be. So with that, I'm going to leave it open to questions.
Thank you very much, Marjolein. Any questions from the audience? Okay, so just to get started, I have a question. Yeah. I'd like to learn more about how you issue badges. So how does recognition happen? For example, I finish a project, do I claim the badge, or does my boss recognize that? And is there any recognition of other competencies that I maybe have but I'm not applying in the job?
Yeah, so well, it starts with guiding employees what badges we want them to have. So endorsements at the start, basically. So our leaders having to communicate what badges people need to earn. And then badges are being issued literally by anybody in a company that wants to do that. But we also need to have an executive owner. So one of the governance steps that we implemented is, if I want to issue badges as an employee, I also need to have executive sponsorship that says I'm entitled to issue these badges for this specific skill. And then the employee basically goes out to the website, sees what criteria, and then claims the badge to say, I've done all of this. And then there's some checks and balances. Sometimes it's learning records or tests that needed to be completed. Sometimes it's more rigorous, like, for example, a peer review. And then once that is done, it's checked, and then the badges are being issued by that organization or by that person. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions?
Thank you. So a lot of what you talked about was how IBM understands the badges that you're self-issuing. How do you think your employees would like to use these badges out in the world and present them to people other than IBM?
Yeah.
And what can we out as collaborators do to help with that?
Well, I think one of the things is creating value. So now it's still the early adoption. Everybody's excited. They have this sticker. But what do you do with it now that I have it? So it has more value inside the IBM walls because we're tying it to compensation and promotions perhaps. Outside the IBM walls, it has as much value as the company or the organization you are looking for a job or working with clients, for example, that put value on that badge. So our experience is that not a lot of clients are using badges yet, so they are a little bit, what do I do with this information? The other thing is universities and learning institutes. So one of the things we are doing too is that, I don't know if you saw the press release on Northeastern, that if IBM employees have earned certain badges, they get prior course credit for following education at a certain university. So for us, it's more about creating value in that external ecosystem. Obviously, we don't want people to leave, but if they do, we do want them to be as prepared as possible so it's easy for them to find another job. So for IBM, we are at the forefront, we're still leading the industry. The risk of that is that the rest of the industry is not there yet, and it's really hard to look at that external ecosystem. Yeah.
Other questions?
Hi, so you said you're looking about finding a way to for semantic and taxology.
Yeah.
So how do you work with that? And like, how are you doing with that, and why you're looking for that, and how are you looking for that to create a common semantic for open badges?
Well, there's again two sides to the story. So there's the internal IBM ecosystem. If that would be the only world, it would be really easy because IBM has their own taxonomy. We map the badges, you're done. That adds value because then if you're looking for that cloud developer, you're all using the same definition and you know what badges actually target that cloud developer. If you currently do a query search on Agile badges, you get 20,000 badges because they all use the word Agile in their metadata, for example. So that doesn't give me anything. I do not know the right cloud developer. So that's one of the big reasons for us internal. Now external, it's about people coming in from AT&T or Ernst & Young with badges. How do we value them to our badges? Are they targeting the same skills? So being able to get a more holistic view on the individual, being able to add them to requisitions, recruit people in the marketplace, I think common semantics is going to be fundamental. Hopefully that's not going to be a manual exercise, but analytics I think can do a lot for us to start connecting these badges together in an architecture so it's easier for us to value badges. I think without that it will be really hard to create the value that we plan to create with badges.
So you're using analytics to do that?
At the moment, we ask, in IBM, we ask badge issuers to tie their badges to the highest level in the taxonomy. And then we're using analytics in the background to basically search and understand what the level of expertise is of an employee. But we're not only using badges. So, for example, if they have a badge as a cloud developer, they've also used that word or did a lot of work around that specific aspect. They have that data in their resume and their social footprint. We combine all of that data, and then the algorithm says, well, with a high likelihood, this person has expertise on cloud or is a cloud developer. So that's how we're using analytics. But it's not 100% match. It just gives you a likelihood because of that digital footprint that they have.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Okay, so please, Andrea.